بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله خير الأسماء. بسم الله رب الأرض ورب السماء. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه داء. بسم الله على نفسي وديني. بسم الله على أهلي ومالي. بسم الله على كل شيء أعطاني. بسم الله الشافي. بسم الله الكافي. بسم الله المعافي. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله رب السماوات ورب الأرض ورب العرش العظيم. بسم الله ذي الشان عظيم السلطان شديد البرهان قوي الأركان. ما شاء الله كان. أعوذ بالله من كل شيطان إنس وجان. بسم الله افتتحت وعلى الله توكلت. الله ربي لا أشرك به أحدا. أسألك اللهم خيرا من خيرك الذي لا يعطيه غيرك عز جارك وجل ثناؤك ولا إله غيرك. لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله خير الأسماء. بسم الله رب الأرض ورب السماء. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه داء. بسم الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا
And sometimes the only person who can really tell you this, though, is your wife. So his wife came to him and she said, "You're always smiling when you're talking. You seem like a madman." You're always smiling at people when you're talking. You seem like a madman. He said that this was the way that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was. Whenever I saw him, he would smile at me, and that's what I'm going to do, regardless of how you think it makes me look. So that was.
And I remember that my mother used to ask me, "But we have done fasted enough. Now it's at 3 o'clock that this is the time for you to do the iftar." But I refused to eat it. And I remember I lie down in the
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول حي على حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Before I open the meeting, let me explain what has been called for. This is the call for the afternoon salah, the prayer. We say Allahu Akbar 4 times. Allah is great, Allah is great. And Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, we bear witness. There is no God but Allah worthy of worship. Say it 2 times. Again, we say 2 times Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. We bear witness that Prophet Muhammad is the messenger, his servant and the messenger of Allah. Then Hayya ala Salah, come for the prayers. Hayya ala Salah, come for the prayer. Hayya ala Falah, come for the goodness. Hayya ala Falah, come for the goodness. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah is great, Allah is great. La ilaha illallah, there is nobody worthy of worship except Allah. Well, Assalamu alaikum again. I would like to welcome you with Islamic greeting. Assalamu alaikum. Thus, peace be upon you. I also mentioned a supplication of Prophet Moses, that I really recite this in every lecture that I go to. I recite this. I'll recite this first in the Arabic, then I'll give the meaning. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. It means Allah is Prophet Moses is asking Allah, "O Allah, fill my chest with the wisdom. Make my job easy. Remove the impediment from my tongue so that the people can understand me." Prophet Muhammad is supposed to have stuttering. So that's why he asked his brother Harun to be with him so that he could preach along with his brother. I thank you very much for showing up this evening. I'm sure you had other engagements also. I'm glad you came. There are people who have come from as far as Lake Zurich. Nancy Mars is studying, but is here from Lake Zurich. So I really appreciate taking the time, and we'll start our program with the recitation of the Holy Quran. This is the tradition. Whenever a Muslim does, they bring the blessings of God that Allah brings. When we recite the Holy Quran, blessing of Allah depends on us. A sakina, I don't know how many of you understand the word sakina. It is a blessing that you feel inside that is descending from the heaven. So I want to invite our young Hafiz, Muhammad Ali Bey. He has memorized the entire Holy Quran, and he recites every night during the month of Ramadan a portion of it. He's going to recite a portion of the Holy Quran and he's going to read the translation. Brother Ali.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكن خيرا منهم ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان ومن لم يتب فأولئك هم الظالمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم ولا تجسسوا ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه واتقوا الله إن الله تواب رحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير صدق الله العظيم.
Indeed, all believers are brethren. Thus set aright relations between your brothers, and fear God, so that you may be shown mercy. O you who believe, men shall not scoff at other men, for those whom they scoff at may be better than them. Nor shall women scoff at other women, for those whom they scoff at may be better than them. Nor shall you slander each other, nor shall you revile each other, by way of abhorrent nicknames. Woeful is the ungodly name after attaining faith. Thus, whoever does not repent from this, then it is these who are the wrongdoers, godless in heart. O you who believe, shun much suspicion, for indeed certain kinds of suspicion are sinful. Nor shall you spy on each other, nor shall you backbite one another. Would any of you like to eat his dead brother's flesh? You would most certainly abhor it. So fear God. Indeed, God is all relenting, mercy-giving. O humankind, indeed we have created all of you from a single male and female. Moreover, we have made you into peoples and tribes, so that you may come to know one another. And indeed, the noblest of you in the sight of God is the most God-fearing of you. Indeed, God is all-knowing, all-aware. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Ali. It was very nice. You did a very good job. Now, it is my pleasure to invite the keynote, the most important person in this masjid is one of the founding member is Abdul Karim Janda, that he will welcome you on behalf of the board. He is a very important person in this masjid. He has done so much service to this community that I welcome him. Please.
Greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, everyone. I hope all is well with you all. My name is Ahmed Kareem Janda, and I'm one of the founding members of this mosque. On behalf of our mosque, its congregants, and our staff and volunteers, I'd like to again welcome you all to our interfaith event. Before going further, I'd like to ask you a question. What made you come here? Yes, it was an invite from Dr. Sami, but you could have said no instead. You put aside having dinner with your family, you put aside spending time watching a show or a sport event, or you put aside your comfort activities to come and bless us with your presence. For that, we are indebted to you and thank you. This action to build bridges of understanding and plant seeds of friendship with people of other faith and culture is the essence what makes America great again and again and again. On the same note, just few days ago, we all laid witness to another horrible and senseless mass shooting, this time in Texas, that has put a pause on our life. Just like everyone here, our thoughts and prayers go out to the victim of this tragedy. You see the reason I mention this? Because my heart wept and beat for my fellow American during such tragedies. Regardless of the fact that one of the victims of the shooting was a young Muslim girl from my birth country of Pakistan. All these children killed were my children. It was like I lost my own children. And this is what I know, that Muslims are part of every fabric of America. We care for each other and pray for each other in good times and bad. Let's continue this. Again, thank you for blessing us with your presence. I hope you have a wonderful night and much love to you all. Thank you again.
Officials, we have a trustee from Roselle City, Mr. Donkey. When Donkey, please stand up. Thank you very much for coming. Mayor of Roselle, he sends his greeting and he had an appointment. So is the mayor of Hanover Park. He is in San Francisco for a meeting. And the mayor of Schaumburg is also busy. So none of the mayors could come. Police chiefs could not come because they're all busy. Unfortunately, I selected a date that all the officials are busy. That is our friend. Those are our friends. That I have a dialogue with them. I serve on the Clergy Association. Our patriarch of the Clergy Association is here, Alan Eaton. Please come and say a few words.
17 years ago, I couldn't remember, I was trying to think. The Clergy Association met in our home. Vicki and I hosted. And that meeting, Dr. Sami came. And it just so happened we were working on our bylaws. And we were a good Judeo-Christian tradition. We had never had a Muslim ever attend any of our meetings. Dr. Sami came. And being the very reserved, quiet man that he is, he interjected that we might ought to consider including Muslims in our statement. And we said, that would be wonderful because you've come. We would never have included if you had never come. And so we started this wonderful, wonderful dialogue. Dr. Sami is the Energizer Bunny. He really is. And he is all about doing good in our community and calling us all to be our best selves. and to work together and serve together and be together. And he's always a great spokesperson for the Muslim family in our association. And he always tells us when we might be advised to write a letter, or make a phone call, or talk to one of our politicians. And recently, we put together over about 3 or 4 months a wonderful letter that Dr. Sami is going to share with you later on, that's going to newspapers and whoever we can get it to. It's a fabulous, fabulous statement. We're fortunate in that we have other faith traditions and other cultural traditions that speak up too. And so our clergy association is becoming a kind of an exciting place to be, right?
Sure, absolutely.
It is.
Yeah.
And we are putting together a, what are we calling it? The team, John, you're heading up, what are we calling it? What?
Crisis response, it's a community engagement team.
Yeah, a community engagement team, where that any faith tradition can contact the clergy association if there is a problem that develops. Dr. Sami, one night at a meeting we were having, mentioned that sometimes he's fearful when he gets out of his car to come here into the mosque. And we said, you know, you ought to be able to call us, and some of us just come and walk with you. So we're putting together this team, and John Moody is heading it up in the back there. So, and John, the reason John's at the back, John's on call chaplain for the hospital, so he might be having to slip out. He didn't want to cause major disruption. So anyway, blessings on you. I am glad every year to get to come. And every year, in the fall of the year, we do a second thing. We do, on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we do a community Thanksgiving service. It's held at Prince of Peace Lutheran Church, and the mosque comes and the synagogue comes. I mean, it is a wonderful, wonderful celebration. And then we all eat pie. And it becomes even better. And Dr. Sami always brings us, you know, naan, and always brings us all this good bread and hummus and to give us a little something other than pie. So I eat both. So thank you, Dr. Sami.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Alan has been in front for 17 years, and he keeps us on track what we should be doing. There are a couple of people here that I would like to recognize, even have come and talk, because we have time. Mike Inger has been in charge of the Clergy Association for a few years. And Mike, would you come and just say a few words?
It's easy to keep people on track when we all share the same goal. So it's really not all that hard to remind people, because they already know what you're going to remind them of. It's been a real experience for me. I've kind of stepped aside the past year, and maybe I'll come back into it again in September. I'm not quite sure yet. But anyway, it's been a pleasure to be with so many wonderful people. Dr. Sami, Alan Eaton, Father John Deerhammer from Holy Spirit's here. I don't see anybody else.
John Moody.
John Moody's here, and I know there's some people from Prince of Peace Lutheran Church that have been involved when we had the, what do we call this series again?
Abraham Salon.
Abraham Salons. So we've accomplished, I think, a few great things in the last couple of years. So anyway, as has already been said, it's really nice to see a good turnout tonight. It's important for us to come together and recognize that we may have differences in how we worship, but we're all worshiping the same God. So I'm glad to be here. Thank Thanks, Dr. Sami.
Thank you very much, Mike. I would like to recognize another good friend of mine who has been behind the spirit of Ibrahim Salon, is Wayne McLaughlin. Please, Wayne, stand up. He has been a force for building the bridges. I have known Wayne for about 10 years now, 10, 12 years. And we used to have 3 sessions, one in the Prince of Peace Lutheran Church, one in the synagogue, and one in the mosque in Rolling Meadows. And Wayne has been behind it. And I would like to recognize also John Moody. John, would you come here and tell what you have started for us? John, when he heard me saying this, I had a meeting here at the Clergy Association, and I mentioned that at times I feel very intimidated, afraid that somebody is looking for me, somebody is going to do some harm to me. John put a team together on his own. I will let him explain what his idea is, how he is going to help anybody who is in need. Please come, John. John is on call. So
I've done a lot. I really haven't done anything. I was the guy who spoke up at the meeting, and then the next guy said, "Why don't you lead this?" And so I said, "Okay." But it just seemed like after hearing Dr. Sami say that he was worried and thought about as he came here and just got out of his car and was a little wondering who's lurking in the shadows, kind of, just because of the kind of culture we live in now. It just touched my heart, and I just wanted him to know there were other people here who would stand with him and stand for the things that he's standing for. And so we just got together, decided, as I said, I spoke up, so I became the leader of this group. But really the other clergy council members, really this is their heart. And so I am sort of a newcomer to this. But just we got together a couple times and just put together a team of people and just wanted to give our telephone numbers, our cell phone numbers, so in case there was ever any trouble or any hint of trouble or anything going on that just was going to divide people or possibly hurt people, that we could just get a call and we would come and try to help out and just be a presence of peace there. So very proud to be part of that, and should you ever need anything, just know that this group exists, and the Clergy Council really, that's their heart, I believe, is just to keep peace and to promote peace in the area.
Since our keynote speaker is not here, but I have an address that I would like to address the group. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Masjid Huda and local area Muslims, I again extend a warm welcome to members of the Clergy Association of Schaumburg and Hoffman State, honorable elected officials, and our neighbors and friends who came from different churches as far as from Lake Zurich. We appreciate you took time from your busy schedule of family lives and chose to come to our event. Under the current circumstances, atmosphere of alienation and discrimination of Islam and Muslims in this country, we value your friendship that gives us hope that human values are alive, and there are friends like all of you here who are willing to stand with us and for the sake of humanity at large. Since 9/11, Islam and Muslims have been in news. Most of the time the news consists of exaggeration, misrepresentation, stretching the fact, or even telling outright lies, resulting fear of unknown in the minds of simple-hearted Americans who believe that what is being said in the news media must be true. Certain news media, I don't want to take the name of it. Once I took the name of it, somebody came and objected that why you have to target a particular news media, so I have not taken the name of it. You know who they are. Certain news media and hate-mongers leaders regard Muslims in this country as a malignant tumor in the body of our nation that needs to be extracted and removed. To this, I like to tell them that Muslims are not an aberrant growth, but a vital organ in the body that support the fabric of our great nation. Amen. Muslims in this country are essential entities performing a vital function in our society. Thousands of Muslim doctors, scientists, teachers, educators, and engineers serve this nation with dedication and passion. I, for one, served as assistant professor and director of the Department of Anesthesiology at University of Minnesota for several years, taught numerous medical students, trained numerous residents in my specialty. I do not know how many of you are aware that iconic structure of city of Chicago, CS Tower, was designed by a Muslim structural engineer, Fazlur Rahman Khan. Who has seen a statue with this tower? Has anybody seen the first floor? Nobody has seen it.
Yeah.
There is a statue, bust statue of Fazlur Rahman, who is the engine behind the Willis Tower. Chief architect, who utilized the bundle tube system to address a structural problem never seen before at this scale. This innovation system ushered a whole new era of skyscrapers. He is regarded by his peers as the father of tubular design for skyscrapers, an Einstein of structural engineering, and he is a Muslim. In several US cities, Muslim doctors operate free medical clinics from their charitable zakat money. Right here in South Chicago, in Inglewood area, our keynote speaker is here. In several US cities, Muslim doctors operate free medical clinics from their charitable zakat money. Right here in South Chicago, in Inglewood area, Muslim organization Iman, Inner City Muslim Action Network, runs a totally free medical clinic 6 days a week, including giving free medication. During Hajj time, Muslims of Chicago give several tons of sacrificial animal meat to the poor living in the South Chicago. Last year during Thanksgiving season, Muslims have distributed more than 2,500 turkeys to poor living near Emitel High School and other 3 schools. And I have contributed every year 5 turkeys on my behalf. In Rolling Meadows, Muslims have started a not-profit organization, Northwest Suburban College, for minority students who cannot afford to go to regular colleges due to high tuition fees. We offer the same courses at a deeply discounted fee prices. Hundreds of minority students have graduated from our college getting diploma in medical assistant, phlebotomy technician, pharmacy technician, and dental assistance program. Muslims are also first responders who sacrificed their lives on that horrible day of 9/11. One of the Muslims by name Salman Hamdani died saving the lives of fellow Americans on that awful day. On April 28, 2014, according to New York Times, Salman Hamdani was honored by the residents and elected officials by formally renaming 2004 Street at 35th Avenue Salman Hamdani Way. We understand Islam is a new kid on the block. This is our turn to be harassed, bullied, and alienated. If we have to learn any lesson from history, we are told the Catholics went through this phase. Jews had tough time initially. Mormons were also regarded unwanted group of the people in this country. Now it is our turn, as Muslims, who have to bite the bullet, keep our heads down, keep paying the taxes, participate in civic activities, and try to integrate in American society by taking part in local and national elections and helping our neighbors. You all know that Americans elected Catholic president and Afro-American president not too long ago. Several Jewish and Mormon senators are elected. Time is coming for Muslims to be accepted in the mainstream of American society. Positive signs are already showing up in response to several incidences of discrimination against Muslims and attacks taking place on Muslim women wearing hijab. Our Clergy Association has drafted a letter in support of local and area Muslims to be sent to newspapers and elected officials showing their concern and displeasure against such heinous acts, allowing them against fellow American Muslims living in this country. I have a copy of this letter. Could you please, somebody, distribute this to... I'm going to read this letter anyway, but you can distribute it. Here is the text of the letter. The Schaumburg Hoffman State Clergy Association is an ecumenical group of faith leaders that meets monthly to fellowship, learn, and mobilize members representing from Christian, Muslim, and Jewish backgrounds. We believe that interfaith work honors the God who is multi-splendid and wide beyond human comprehension. Though we may have different ways of connecting with God, speaking of God, and understanding God's work and presence of the world, we believe that building relationship with one another and understanding each other promotes sacred peace. These two paragraphs are very important. The author of this letter, Amy, she said she's going to come, but she's not here. I don't see. I was going to have her read this letter because she drafted such a beautiful letter. Given the current national climate of fomenting bigotry, we would like to make a statement in particular in support of our Muslim brothers and sisters to acknowledge and condemn the presence of prejudice in our society, in our congregations, public Christian discourse, and proclaim that neither Christianity, nor Judaism, nor Islam should be distorted or exploited for evil purposes. The next paragraph says, we denounce the spirit of hatred and fear that spreads lies about Islam and paints a people of peace as perpetrators of violence. We understand that various terrorists proclaim false alliance with every religion, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and that terrorists discredit the name of God. We affirm a spirit of inclusion, love, and tolerance, trusting God to guide us through troubled times and seeing God's creativity already working in our midst. This is the letter that we intend to send to elected officials and newspapers. Some people ask me, why do we invite non-Muslims every year after year? What is our intention? Islam is not an evangelical religion. We are not trying to convert non-Muslims. However, we are trying to tell and show them that who we are and what do we believe in. We want to remove numerous misconceptions that have been spread about Muslims and Islam. We want to tell all of you, the entire world, that so-called Islamic State and ISIS does not represent me or any Muslims in this world. These are the terrorist, murderous organization that negate the core principle of Islam, that if you kill one human being, as if you have killed entire humanity, and if you saved one human being, as if you have saved the entire humanity. Since I have some time, I would like to mention something that happened last April. Masjid Huda had a fundraising dinner here, and they honored few people, including me. When I heard they are honoring me, Manan, one of the board members, informed me he wanted me to get a picture. I was surprised that they are honoring me. It occurred to me a Persian saying, Man anam ke mandanam. It means, I know who I am. I have so many flaws in myself. I have so many weaknesses in myself. How do I deserve to get this honor? This is the plaque they gave me.
Doctor, can you hold this, please? Thank you.
It happened that I came close to death 6 times in my life. First time, when I was 6 years of age, I was suffering with typhoid fever. Those days there was no antibiotic available, chloramphenicol was not available. I was reduced to bone and skin. Everybody gave up on me. Beggars were standing in front of her door getting the charity and food every single day. My mother had an idea to sacrifice an animal in lieu of my life that worked like a charm. Next day my fever came down and it remained down. In about 2-3 weeks, I started to go to school and I became well. Second incident came when I was 16 years of age. I was going in Hyderabad in the month of May. Temperature was 105. I was going up and down for 2.5 miles. All I remember that I hit a truck and fell down. Then I remember waking up at my home and somebody is giving me injection on my thigh. Being a medical student and becoming a doctor, I realized that I had subdural hematoma, fracture of a skull. Usually it happens to soccer players. They get hit by the soccer ball and they fall down and they wake up again. It's known as lucid interval. I went into lucid interval and I came home without knowing how I got home. But I woke up and stayed awake. I did not go back into coma. Usually the course of this subdural hematoma is. Another 4 times I was in Saudi Arabia. I came fraction of a second to be killed on the roads of Riyadh and Jeddah. Allah saved my life. I always used to ask, why Allah is saving my life so many times? And I got the answer, Allah wants me to get this reward. Now, our keynote speaker is here. Let me introduce Brother Abdul Malik. Brother Abdul Malik was born Michael Patrick Ryan in Chicago, Illinois. He studied Afro-American history in high school and DePaul University, and his encounter with the life and legacy of Malcolm X, Malik Shahbaz, led him to accept Islam in 1994. He was one of the founding members and he's the past president of the board of directors of Inner City Muslim Action Network that I mentioned. They run the free medical clinic. He is a graduate of Georgetown University Law Center, worked as an attorney for children in the foster care system for 14 years. He previously served as Imam of the Inner City Muslim Action Islamic Center and has been the Muslim chaplain of DePaul University since 2009. In addition to Islamic theology and law, he is passionate about interfaith dialogue, Irish history and culture. He currently lives in south side of Chicago with his wife and his 5 children. Please welcome Brother Abdul Malik.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. We begin in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. May the peace and blessings of God be upon the Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet Jesus, the Prophet Moses, and upon all the prophets, the saints, and all the righteous people. Ameen. I wanted to start, as you may have seen, the topic that I selected for this was diversity, human diversity, a blessing of God, a blessing of the Creator. And I wanted to start by just reflecting a little bit, because I'm going to primarily base my remarks around 3 different ayat, 3 different verses of the Quran. And it helps a little bit to understand the Quran, to understand the society of the Prophet Muhammad and the Arabs to which the Quran was originally revealed, which may at first glance seem very different than our society, and in some ways in terms of technology and things it was very different. This is 1400 years ago. But in other ways, I think as we go through this topic of diversity, and we'll see that there are a lot of similarities that also exist between that society and between our society. So the first thing you have to understand, of course, is that the society, there were divisions in the society, there were different groups of people, but the divisions were based upon tribes, okay? That was how you determined who your social network was, who you could depend on. You have to always remember, because it's so far from our experience, this is not a society where there's a such thing as calling the police. There's not a such thing as like a government even. There's not a formal, there's no political office holders. Everything is done through family relationships. So if you need something, if you're in need of something, you can turn to the people you can count on. And if you are being abused by someone, or if you're being exploited by someone, you have to turn to the people you can count on. This is why, and this was also true of some of the societies that are, discussed in the Bible and in other books. This is why the admonishments in the Bible and the continued remindments of our duty to stand up for the strangers and to stand up for the poor and the orphans and stuff is so important. Because if we as people of faith, if we didn't stand up for those people, there would be no one to stand up for them. Because those were the people in society that didn't have that family network, that didn't have those other people to count on them. So, but it's a tribal society, and in a tribal society, your identity is determined by your family. Okay, so you'd be known by your family. Like a tribe would be known by we're the children of so and so, and they would trace themselves back to a single figure to whom that tribe would be. Now, one of the interesting and beautiful things about that, when I was young, I used to notice that whenever you meet someone, whenever you go and meet someone, and then you tell them, like, so for example, I went to school in Washington, D.C. If I would meet someone in Washington, D.C. for the first time, they'd be like, okay, so where are you from? And I say, I'm from Chicago. And then they say, well, I knew someone from Chicago once, or I visited Chicago once. I went up to Sears Tower. You know the Sears Tower? I'd be like, yeah, I know the Sears Tower. And it would be like these things, and I used to think it was somewhat comical because I'm like, everyone knows the Sears Tower. Like that doesn't really seem like a connection between us that you've heard of, like Chicago or the north side of Chicago, or you knew someone who went there once. But you find that when people meet each other, they're always, this is actually, as I got older and I learned, this is actually a tremendously beautiful thing, that when two people meet each other, to try to find a connection between them. And even if the connection seems far, to see it as a connection and to see it as something important. And so in the tribal society, the way the Prophet ﷺ, the peace be upon him, the way the Prophet Muhammad and other people would do that, is that he had his close companion Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and Abu Bakr was known that he knew the genealogies of the tribes going back a long way. So whenever they would meet someone, Abu Bakr could tell you, oh, you're so-and-so, and your grandfather was so-and-so, and your great-grandfather, and your great-great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather was so-and-so, until they could find a match between the two of them. And they go, oh, we're just like cousins, we're like, we know each other. We're basically family. And in that society, that was so important, because that was a connection, not only a human connection, but that was an important connection. Once you realized in that society that someone was related to you and was your family member, then you had to stand up for them, and you couldn't abuse them, and you owed them rights and obligations that you had to honor. So it was very important that that was established for those people. So we see in that context that the Prophet ﷺ, in terms of this topic of diversity, the ayah that's most often stressed, the ayah that's most often brought up, and ayah is the word for what we translate as verse of the Quran. But ayah is actually a much more beautiful word than that. Like verse is not, I don't know the etymology of verse, maybe someone can tell me later on. But verse, we just seem like, oh, that's one unit of it, like, but ayah means sign, okay? Ayah means sign. So each verse, but also it can be translated as miracle. In the Quran, ayah is used for miracle, because miracles are signs of God. Ayah is also used for one of my favorite things, and the way that one of my favorite translators, Muhammad Asad, he translated this verse, I really like. Because this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف سناتكم وألوانكم إن في ذلك لآيات للعالمين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quranic verse says, and from his ayat, from his signs. But Muhammad Asad, he translated from his wonders. I like how he translated. He said from his wonders, because these signs are things that should make you wonder, things that should make you think, things that should make you ponder. And God in the Quran, he uses a lot of different examples of things that are from his ayat. And he talks about the differences of night and day, the way night turns into day and turns into night and turns into day, the way the seasons go, and the way that the earth dies and then it's brought back to life. These are all signs. The way that the stars are set up so that you can navigate yourself at night. The way that human beings, are born and die, and all these things. These are all ayat that you're supposed to ponder and take lessons from. And among these ayat, among these magnificent signs or wonders that God has in the Quran, he says that from his signs, from his wonders, is the creation of the heavens and the earth. As-samatu wal-ard, the heavens and the earth. And the diversity, waqtilaf, the differences in your tongues, your languages, and your colors between you. Indeed, in this, there are signs for those people who know. Okay, so there is tremendous signs in the diversity between human beings that we have based on our colors and our languages. This is the Quran 1400 years ago saying that there's signs in this. But the question is, what is the message of this? What is the message of this, of the diversity that God created? And the Quran in many other places refers to this, that if God had wanted to create us all the same, He could have done that. It's not an accident that we're different, and it's not because somehow it got out of control, like God lost control of this thing and it just ended up we're all different and, fighting with each other and stuff like that. No. God created us consciously different. God wanted us to be different. He thought that would be beautiful. And we have to understand why God might want that. So in the other verse that we're going to reflect on today, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, wa ja'alnakum sha'uba wa kaba'ila lita'arafu. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. So God says that, O people, Ya ayyuhan nas, and this is important, because I want people to know that the Quran talks, when the Quran addresses people, it addresses different groups of people. Sometimes it says, O you people of the book. Sometimes it says, which is referring to Jews and Christians, or people who had scriptures before the Muslim scripture. Sometimes it says, O you Bani Israel, the children of Jacob, the descendants of Jacob, as we just said, this concept of Bani Israel, the children of Israel. Then we have, it sometimes says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you people who claim to have faith, or O you people who are believers, you claim to have iman, which is faith or belief. It addresses different people. Here it says, sometimes it addresses Bani Adam, all the children of Adam. Here it says Nas, which similarly means all people. So it says, O you people. So this is a Quranic address that is addressing everyone. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, not Muslim, man, woman, whatever color you are, it's addressing everyone. God is addressing everyone, saying, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. Indeed, we created you from a single male and female. We created you from a single male and female. So again, this is why I started with that thing about the tribal society and the connections. God is reminding us that you all are come from a single male and female. So every person you meet, whether you've traced your genealogy enough to know it yet, I started working on my family tree a lot because this is something, as I said, the Prophet Muhammad stressed that we should do. And we did I sent my daughter away for the ancestry DNA test. I thought that was real smart because I was like, should I do it or should my wife do it? I'm like, we'll just have one of the kids do it and then we can just double it up from there. And hopefully it will work well for us since my wife is born in Pakistan, so our streams are far apart. we can figure out where we are. So, and we got it back. It's a little interesting, but I'm trying to fill out the thing. They need to work on, I think, their other parts of the world. They have a little more interesting information on my ancestors who come from Ireland and stuff. But my wife, it just says my daughter's 50% South Asian. I'm like, okay, we knew that. But that's at least it confirmed that they were testing the right sample. Okay, so but they just said the whole South Asian, all these billions of people. Alhamdulillah. So, anyways, what I said is when you get that thing, the importance of that is that you find that connection. So God is telling them, all of you, whether you've traced it back far enough or whether you have Abu Bakr with you, the companion that knows the genealogies or whatever, whether you can figure it out or not, I'm telling all of you that if you went back far enough in your family tree, you all come from Adam, Prophet Adam, peace be upon him. So you can all greet each other and say that we're both children of Adam, we're family members, we're part of the same tribe in that sense. But God doesn't stop there, because a lot of times we ask these questions about human diversity. Sometimes people are afraid of diversity. So sometimes people will make a statement like we're all the same and there's no such thing as race and these things, which these statements are true in certain ways and not true in other ways. But sometimes we make these statements because we're afraid of the differences between us and we're afraid of acknowledging the diversity between us and we're afraid of acknowledging privileges that some of us have and we're afraid of a lot of different things. But here, God is saying, how am I going to approach this issue? So God says, "O people, indeed you were created from a single male and female. You are part of the same family." And then, وَجَعَلْنَكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ, and then He made them into peoples and tribes. He created all human beings from one family, but then He made them into different peoples and tribes. And the other ayah, remember, said, He made their differences in colors and tongues and languages and all that stuff. So all of these things are not accidents and they're not nothing. They were made by God, and they're signs that God gave us that we should ponder upon and reflect. And then He says, Li ta'arafu. So this is the key term here. Li ta'arafu. This is God telling you, why did He do that? Why did He make people into different nations and tribes? Li ta'arafu. In order that you can get to know one another. In order that you can come to know one another. So our differences, the Quranic prescription is that your differences help you to get to know each other better. Your differences should help you to get to know each other better. Now, is that our experience? Is that our experience that differences help us to get to know each other better?
Yep.
Sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes our differences form a barrier between us. Sometimes other people exploit our differences to divide us and keep us apart from each other. But God is telling us here that our differences should be able to bring us together. And this is what I wanted to... This is why an event like this is so beautiful. Because this is a group of people, the people who do the inviting and the people, Dr. Khalid, and who organize this, and the people who respond to the invitation and come out here are both saying that yes, we're embracing this idea that we want to get to know people who are different than us. We want to come to know each other. We want to spend time with each other. We're not going to wall ourselves off in our separate neighborhoods or areas. And we can wall ourselves off physically, and we also can sometimes wall ourselves off mentally. And just say, oh, those people's problem are not our problem. Oh, those people are a threat to us. We got to keep them out. All these kind of ways of thinking as there's us and there's them. But this is a way of understanding that, yes, we have differences, and we can acknowledge those differences, but those differences help us to know each other better and to learn from each other better. And how can that happen? So how do we get to an environment like that? Alhamdulillah, all of you are here, so you've taken that step forward. You've taken, and I'm sure most of you have done it many times before, and this is the way you live your life. And one of the challenges of interfaith gatherings is always that we're kind of speaking to the choir in a way. We're kind of preaching to the people who already are committed to this, and the people out there who wouldn't come to this are the ones who really need to hear this message, not the ones who are here. But we can still embrace and learn from each other on a deeper level. And I think, because as someone who does a lot of interfaith, I know that sometimes interfaith is always beautiful, but sometimes can be a little superficial, right? It can be a little superficial sometimes, because we're still afraid of those differences between us, and we're still afraid of really talking about something. I know when I talk to my students about interfaith, they're always a little anxious about it. Because they either understand interfaith to be, let's come together and have a religious theological debate with each other, or they understand it to be, let's just come together and tell each other we're all the same. And they're like, either of those don't seem that exciting or inspiring, and not even really truthful. So I can see why that they're not inspired by the idea of bad interfaith gathering, or not bad necessarily, but just not done well, not done excellently, not done beautifully. So we want to take that step. And why I think this particular type of gathering is actually beautiful, though, is because I think one of the things that can open up that space like that is the process of fasting. I find the process of fasting, it opens up people's heart. Like the process of fasting, I'm now, and we're not going to start a debate here. I don't know when Masjid Huda started. Sometimes Muslims, based on the sighting of the moon, we start on one day or the other. So, but I personally, it's been about a week since we started fasting. Okay, so now it's been a week of fasting, and I know that one of the things is of course, everyone, the first couple of days, the main thing is hard not to notice anything other than your caffeine headache and stuff like that you have from the withdrawal. But after you get past that stage, you kind of settle to a little more calmer way, at least I do. You have lower energy, but you're still at peace with yourself. You're not you're not like fiending for that caffeine or whatever. But at the same time, your emotions are a little closer to the surface, you know. So sometimes that comes up in like being short with people and a little bit, but hopefully not if you're in a good place spiritually. A lot of times what I've noticed about myself a lot is that it's a lot easier for me to feel like emotions like love and to cry and to do all these things. When I'm fasting, it comes a lot quicker to me. And I wish some of the most beautiful spiritual people and teachers that we have, they're more like that all the time. Like you see that they're very not afraid of being like that, but some of us, we kind of keep ourselves hemmed in, and we might be taught that culturally or whatever, based on stereotypes of our gender or whatever, we may be taught to act a certain way. But this fasting kind of lets down those guards, and it brings out your actual feelings and brings those close to the surface. And I also think it brings out human connections, and it brings out honesty, and it brings out willing to speak with each other. One of my favorite, Yahya ibn Zakaria. Who knows who Yahya ibn Zakaria is in the Muslim tradition? Huh? Does anyone know? Yes.
John the Baptist.
Okay, so yeah, he's what we call John the Baptist. So Yahya, John the son of Zakaria, we call him John the Baptist in the Christian tradition. Now, Yahya ibn Zakaria, there's a beautiful narration that's in the Muslim tradition that Yahya ibn Zakaria was given these commands and that he was supposed to give them to the people, and he was holding back from giving them to the people. I'm not sure why. And then Prophet Jesus came, and he was telling him, like, are you going to tell the people this? And he said, like, okay, I'm going to tell them because I know God will like swallow me up if I don't tell them. And he's like, you better, or I'm going to tell them. So then it's just an interesting introduction to the statement. But then Yahya ibn Zakaria, he says a beautiful thing, and I'm not going to mention all of it, but I'm going to mention a beautiful thing that he's told the people that he was commanded with 5. And this is a very important, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, but it's very important that we specify this, that the verse in the Quran that commands fasting, that orders us to fast, mentions fasting is prescribed for you, fasting is ordered for you, just as it was prescribed for those before you. Meaning people of other religious traditions and different prophets, it was prescribed before you. So again, this is a way that the Quran, for those not familiar with the Quran constantly brings this diversity of different religious traditions and prophets to the minds of the Muslim who's reading the Quran. It always brings this attention, and this is one of the, realities of the Quran being the scripture that was revealed after the Torah and the Injil, so it can comment upon them, and it can allude to them, and it can discuss them, and you can understand it in light of them. That this is something that was brought before us. So whenever Muslims fast, we think about people from other traditions. And I know sometimes, we have, of course, for Jews, we have like Yom Kippur and stuff. For Christians, it kind of varies a lot whether a lot of modern contemporary Christians are in touch with fasting a lot and stuff like that. And sometimes we assume that they're not because we're around certain type of secular Christians or people who are, which is okay. That's okay. But it was interesting because I was talking about fasting today at a meeting with my university ministry colleagues at DePaul, and one of the Christian pastor who was with me, Pastor Keith Baltimore, he was mentioning how he grew up in a Pentecostal home that practiced a lot of fasting, and even so much so that his family got in trouble because he was fasting at a young age, and they called the authorities like they shouldn't have been fasting and stuff. So that was a story, But so it just brought to mind again that there are definitely traditions that do a lot of fasting. And I know nowadays there are different spiritual traditions that do a lot of different kinds of fasting. So it may not be exactly the fasting that we're doing, which is no food or drink during daylight hours, but it may be different kinds of fasting. But I think it's important that we think of all those things together, and we think of all the ways that we share these spiritual traditions. But Yahya ibn Zakaria, he mentions in this hadith, he mentions that he gathered the people in Jerusalem, stood on the top of the wall, and he mentioned that God has commanded you with certain things. And a lot of these are acts of worship that we all share. But why I wanted to mention this is that when you come to fasting, I find it so beautiful. And this is what fasting, if it's done correctly, if it's done right, should be about. He said, He commands you with fasting. For indeed the parable of fasting is that of a man in a group with a satchel containing musk. All of them enjoy its fragrance. Indeed, the breath of the fasting person is more pleasant to Allah than the scent of musk or perfume, a good scent. So, again, to get the image is like, the way that they used to dress was with these big bulky garments, okay? Like these big robes and stuff like this. So, imagine if someone was in the gathering with one of those robes, but under it they were tied, like all these perfume bottles were tied under them, okay? And they would walk through the gathering, and everyone would be like, man, it smells so good in here. But we don't know why, because they didn't see what was going on. And this should be the example that Yahya ibn Zakaria is saying, this should be, peace be upon him, is saying this should be the example of the fasting person. That no one has to know that you're fasting, but everyone around you should feel, wow, it's so beautiful in here. Something about this is wonderful. Something about being around this person is wonderful. Something about them is beautiful. So it shouldn't be about us telling people we're fasting or talking about it, or them worrying, I can't mention that, we're going to lunch now because you can't eat and I'm going to make you feel bad or something. It shouldn't be anything like that. It should be something where we're going through life in a beautiful, serene way. And then he makes a very interesting statement, if you caught it, where he says, the breath, and this is a famous statement that we say in the Islamic tradition, the breath of the fasting person is more beloved to God than the scent of musk, okay? Now, what do we know about the breath of a fasting person? I don't know if you guys have fasted before. Now, if you think of like someone who, if you go to sleep at night and then you wake up in the morning, like because you haven't eaten anything or put any water or anything in your mouth for a long time, it develops a certain kind of odor, right? We call it like morning breath, right? But, so we don't usually think of it as pleasant. And one of the beautiful things I love about Islamic scholars is that they looked at the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, and they said, peace be upon him, and they said, when it says the breath of the fasting person is more beloved to God than musk, is it talking about on the Day of Judgment, like the breath of that person will be beautiful on the Day of Judgment? Or is it talking about in this world that breath is actually beautiful? Because they're like, sometimes we don't seem that breath doesn't smell that good to us. And what I love about Islamic scholarship is that one of my favorite scholars, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he's talking about this hadith and then he goes into like a 10-page discussion of this issue, like how the scholars debated back and forth about whether it's only the Day of Judgment or whether the breath in this world actually is more beloved to God than musk, the breath of the fasting person in this world. And both of them have their arguments, but I'm in favor of the people who say it's the breath in this world as well as on the Day of Judgment. That smells beautiful to God, and it goes back to this concept of ayat, this concept of sign, this concept of beauty, then this concept of the person walking around with the musk tied under them. Sometimes there is beauty in the world and there is beauty in people that some people see and some people don't. That some people see and some people don't. We mentioned there's the famous saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Yeah. And I always wondered, like, what does that statement exactly mean? And I mean, the most superficial lens, that just means that beauty is subjective. Like, you can't, if I say this is beautiful, you can't tell me, no, that's not beautiful, because it's beautiful to me. Like, it's subjective. But I think it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. When I think of it, I think it means that beauty is there. Beauty is actually something that exists. It's something that is an objective reality that God is seeing, like the beauty of the breath of the fasting person, or the beauty of the light that's on a righteous, spiritually beautiful person's face. All these things, these are realities that are there, but not everyone sees them. So just because not everyone sees it doesn't mean it's not real. There are many ayat of God, there are many signs and wonders and miracles of God that are going on all around us that some people don't see. Because you have to have your heart open to those and you have to be looking for them. And to a person who understands the universe this way, to a person who understands that everything around them are ayat of God, they see these signs everywhere. And to a person who doesn't understand the world this way, they don't see these signs at all. They pass by them all the time and they're not seeing it. And this is a beautiful thing. one of the most beautiful stories that you may be familiar with, where we see this in the Quran, is the story of Prophet Joseph. Right? Prophet Joseph, the son of Jacob. Now, Prophet Joseph, I don't know if this is in the Christian or Jewish tradition, but in the Muslim tradition, the Prophet Muhammad said that Prophet Yusuf, we call Prophet Joseph, was given half of all beauty. God gave him half of all beauty. So if you think of beauty, there's like Prophet Joseph got half, and then all the rest of us are sharing the other half of beauty, from the most beautiful to the least beautiful. So if Yusuf is this beautiful, I started to ask myself, and there are times we know in the story of Prophet Joseph where his beauty becomes very obvious and apparent, like other people comment on it. But I started to ask myself, if we go through the story of Prophet Joseph, do people see his beauty? Do the people he encounters see how beautiful he is? They're encountering half of all beauty standing before them. Do people see it? And the answer is, when you go through the story, some people do and some people don't. And some people see it. So what happens originally? Does his father see his beauty? Yes. His father Jacob sees his beauty, and Jacob loves Joseph very much. Does his brother see his beauty? No. They see it. They see it a little bit, because they're like, I can see that our father loves Joseph more than us. But they see it, but it makes them jealous, and they're afraid of it. So they're like, we have to get this away from our father, because we want our father to focus on us, and as long as Joseph's around, he's not going to focus on us. So they see his beauty, but they view it as a threat to themselves. Then when Joseph is taken out by the brothers, and he's left out there, and again, this is the Quranic story, it could have some differences from the Bible story. In the Quranic story, when he's taken out by the brothers, and left in the bottom of the well, a caravan of traders come along. Do they see his beauty? And here the Quran is very clear that they don't see his beauty. Because it says they were of those people who, they were zahideen, they paid him no mind. He was not precious to them at all. They picked up Joseph, and he was someone who was not precious to them at all. And all they saw in him was some boy that they could sell for a small amount of money. But they sold him for a small amount of money. And they didn't see his beauty. They didn't know what they had. Even being the evil people that they were, who are willing to sell someone into slavery, if they had just stopped and looked at what they had, they would know they should get a much higher price for Joseph, that this was an amazing, intelligent, beautiful young person that they had, but all they saw was someone that they could get rid of as a servant for a small amount. And we see this, and then he comes to the palace of the Aziz, and the women, the wife of the Aziz sees Yusuf's beauty, but in the Quranic story, she becomes intoxicated by it. She wants to possess and use the beauty. She wants to have it for herself. She wants to do something that is not permitted by God, because the beauty overtakes her. So she sees the beauty, but she wants to use it. Then, when she makes a false allegation against Joseph, he's put in prison. Do the people in the prison see Joseph's beauty? In the Quranic story, the people in the prison see Joseph's beauty, because they have dreams, and they come and they say, we need you to interpret these dreams for us. And the Quranic verse says, because we have seen that you are from the muhsinin. We have seen, and muhsinin is a beautiful word. In Arabic, the root hasan means like good, excellent, but also beautiful. It's what it means, beautiful. So this idea of ihsan, which can be sincerity, can be excellence, can also be beauty in the Quranic concept. So they come and see one of the muhsinin. One way to translate that is, you are one of the people that does beautiful things, or one of the people who spreads beauty wherever you go. And that's always been one of the most moving parts of the story of Joseph to me, is that Joseph, throughout all these things, throughout whether he was with his family, home happy, whether he was in the bottom of the well, lonely and desperate, whether he was in the caravan being traded, whether he was in the palace working, whether he was in the prison, wherever Joseph was, he spread his beauty everywhere. And he spread that beauty everywhere, and some people saw it and appreciated it, but many people didn't see it, or only saw how they could use it for their own benefit. And eventually, God shows us how Joseph can use his beauty for the benefit of the whole community. And we never should forget, because in the Muslim tradition, the story of Joseph was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in order to, was revealed to him at a time when the Prophet, peace be upon him, was at his lowest point. It was revealed to him after he had just lost his wife, his first wife had passed away, and his uncle who had protected him had passed away. And the Prophet, and he was also being pushed out of Mecca, and no one was accepting him yet. So he was at his lowest, most desperate point, and God relates to him the story of Prophet Joseph. And we see so many messages in it, and it begins by saying, God begins by saying, in this story there are ayat, again, there are signs, teachings, examples, lessons for the people who are asking you questions. So people who are asking questions of the Prophet ﷺ about his future. And they said to him, but so this is where you understand the true importance from a Quranic perspective of the ending of the story of Prophet Joseph. Because what happens at the ending of the story of Prophet Joseph? He's reunited with his brothers and his father. He's reunited with his brothers and father. So this was God telling Prophet Muhammad, not that eventually all these people, many of the people who were pressing him and throwing out were like his uncles and his cousins and his family members. He didn't tell him to comfort him that those people, you're going to eventually get back at them and you're going to do to them what they did to you. No, he's telling them through this story that those people, you'll eventually be reconciled with them and you'll all be happy again together. Which is what Joseph wanted when he was at the bottom of the well. In the Quranic story, God comes and says to him, you will be reunited with your brothers in the future and you will inform them about this matter when they don't recognize you. And one of the things I love about that verse is that it's clear that Joseph can't possibly understand what that means. He can't possibly understand what it means that you're going to be reunited with your brothers and you're going to inform them about this matter while they don't recognize you or they don't know who you are. And he can't possibly know what he means, but through everything he goes through being in the bottom of the well, through being in the prison, through being in the palace of the Aziz, working through all these things, he always knows, eventually I'm going to be back with my brothers, because that's where he wanted to be, and eventually I'm going to get through this. My story is not going to end here. My story is not going to end in the well. My story is not going to end in the prison. There's something else still happening. So this is the beautiful example that God is now giving to the Prophet Muhammad, that your story is not going to end here with your family turning against you and kicking you out of your town and with you being at this low point, but you're going to be returned and reconciled with all of these people, and that is the beautiful thing that you want. So we're getting close to the time. This is always a difficult role to be in too. I mean, normally when you're speaking, you feel like you're keeping the people from eating, but here, like, at least the Muslims, we can't eat until 8:15, so it doesn't matter. But I don't know I hope I'm not keeping you guys from eating. I don't mean to, but I wanted to just mention a final point. Is that okay, Dr. Khalid? Should I finish? Or
No.
when do you have time? Okay. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So, I don't know, and then we're going to have Q&A. Do we want to open the Q&A? Okay. So I will just finish and then we'll have Q&A. So, you know, one of the beautiful, we see that when the Prophet ﷺ, when you see these beautiful people, one of the most favorite things for me is that these ayat, we can become signs for each other. We can become ayat for each other. And this is the beautiful thing of God saying that among His ayat are the differences in your languages and colors. That then when we encounter a person who's different from us, we don't see someone who's a threat, we don't see someone who's a danger, we don't see someone who's a competitor, but we see someone who's a sign that God sent to speak to us. And that is a beautiful thing. Imagine if we were to encounter everyone that you encountered like that. How would your life be different? How would your environment be different? And this is how the prophets and the holy people were. And that's why when people were around them, it was very intoxicating, because imagine if you're around someone, imagine being around someone who sees you as an ayat, sees you as a miracle, a wonder, a sign of God. It makes you feel pretty special, right?
Yeah.
It would make you feel pretty special. If you've ever been around someone who made you feel like that looked at you like that saw you like that, you will always want to be around that person. And that is how the companions of the Prophet Muhammad and the companions of all the prophets I know were with those people, that they felt that magic and they always wanted to be with them. And so they would, among the stories of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, they would often comment that they would feel that, I can tell that he likes me more than anyone else. I don't know why, but I can tell that he has something special for me, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one of the companions famously narrates that this feeling was just so strong I couldn't help anymore. So I went up to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and I asked him, who do you love the most? Tell me who you love the most. And because hoping that he would say that he loved him most. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, I love my most Aisha, okay? Who was his wife? Who do you love the most wife? He said, no, I mean of the men. No, I know you love your wife the most. I'm talking about who do you love the most out of the men? And then he said, her father, which is Abu Bakr, which was his close companion. But the way he said her father again was showing how much he loved Aisha so much. That the one I love the most is her father. And then he mentioned, okay, who do you love the next most? And then he mentioned Umar radiallahu anhu, Umar bin al-Khattab, who was another famous companion. And then he was like, okay, I had to stop asking. He realized, I'm not doing myself any favors by asking, but he still felt that way around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so these people, and you'll notice if you go through the narrations of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one thing I love the most is that the people who were closest to him, and I noticed that some of the people who narrate stories about the Prophet ﷺ, we have this thing called hadith, which are stories that people narrate about the Prophet ﷺ, that his companions narrate. And I would look at them, and I would say, one of the things, some of the people when they were narrating it, normally when they're narrating, they'll say, Rasulullah ﷺ said, the Messenger of God said. They would call him Rasulullah. They wouldn't just call him Muhammad, so peace be upon him. They would say, the Messenger of God said. But some narrations that I found so beautiful, they would say, Khalili told me. My close friend told me. So they would be telling these stories in the future after the Prophet ﷺ had returned to God, and they would be saying, my close friend, my Khalil, my bosom friend, he told me such and such. And then I was saying, this is so beautiful that these people call him Khalili. And I wanted to see if there was a commonality between these Khalilis, and I started talking about it, and then someone pointed out to me, another chaplain of mine, which was beautiful. He said, oh, you're saying that you found this person said it, and this person said it, and this person said it, and this person said it. Yeah, that's what I found. I'm trying to see what the connection is between all of them. And he said, I think all those people are from Ahl Sufa. And I said, let me check. And then I checked and it was true. All those people that used to refer to him as Khalili were from Ahl Sufa. Ahl Sufa are the people of the Sufa, the people who are basically living in the homeless shelter next to the masjid. Next to the mosque of the Prophet ﷺ, there was the Sufa was where people could come when they didn't have a home yet or nowhere they could stay. They would just come and stay there and live there. And the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would get charity, he would give it to them. Whenever he would get a gift, he would share it with them. And the Prophet ﷺ would always come and respond to their invitations and eat with them and everything. And the Prophet ﷺ, and they would say, and I noticed that these are the people who would go to their graves saying that Khalili, my good friend, my close friend told me this or told me that, and I'm not going to go against anything. And people would argue with him and say, okay, you want to do this, but this practical reason, or we can't do this or that. They would just say, you can do what you have to do. My Khalili told me this, and that's what I'm going to do. And so that's why Abu Darda, one of them, he would say, he would talk whenever he was speaking and teaching, he would always be smiling when he was speaking. And if you can imagine, I don't know how people do it, I hope I'm smiling a little bit, but if you saw someone who's always smiling when they're speaking to you, you might get a little creeped out sometimes. So, they said this, and sometimes the only person who can really tell you this though is your wife. So his wife came to him and she said, you're always smiling when you're talking. You seem like a madman. You're always smiling at people when you're talking. You seem like a madman. He said this was the way the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was. Whenever I saw him, he would smile at me. and that's what I'm going to do, regardless of how you think it makes me. So that was the beauty they had. So I'm going to end my remarks now with a beautiful blessing. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he was sharing this food, as I said, I believe this fasting and the sharing of food together creates a beautiful spiritual opening between people. And I believe it brings hearts together. And I believe when we stop and reflect and mention God and mention the blessings of God, I believe that angels come and fill this room. So the angels are here, our hearts are open, the fasting has brought all our defenses down, so hopefully something beautiful can happen. This when the Prophet Muhammad was in such a gathering, he was always very important that, imagine these people who loved the Prophet, peace be upon him, so much, they would always want something special from him. And the most special thing he could do when he visited their homes, he would pray in their homes, and they would leave that as a spot where for the rest of their lives they would always tell people, this is where Prophet Muhammad visited and he prayed. And especially the poor people would love to have that spot and let them know that he loved us and he came to visit us just like he came to visit all the important people. But the Prophet, when he would sit with people and break fast with people, he would always make a prayer for them, and that's what they loved the most. The people who served him, they would start to realize that the greatest gift he could give us if he gives us a special prayer, if he makes a prayer for us. And the Prophet ﷺ, this prayer I found so beautiful, and then I wondered why, and I think the main reason I found it beautiful is because to me it speaks of those beautiful spaces of the Prophet Muhammad sharing food with people when they're breaking their fast. But the other reason I think I love it is because if you translate it into English, it kind of sounds like an Irish blessing. Okay? So I think it appealed to something deep, primordially in me. So, the Prophet ﷺ, when he would break fast with someone, when he would share that meal, he would say to them, أَفْتَرَ إِنْدُكُمْ السَّائِمُونَ وَأَكَلَ تَعَامَكُمْ الْأَبْرَارُ وَصَلَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. He would say to them, أَفْتَرَ إِنْدُكُمْ السَّائِمُونَ. May those people who are fasting, those people who are going without, those people who are hungering for justice, those people who are hungering for anything, may they always break their fast with you. May the people who are fasting always break their fast with you. وَأَكَلَ تَعَامَكُمْ الْأَبْرَارُ. And may the righteous people, the most righteous and noble people, always share your food. وَصَلَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. May the angels always pray for you and bless you. So this was the dua that the Prophet would leave with those people. This is the dua that I leave with all of you. If we can all say amen to that dua. Amen. We ask that God grant that. Thank you all for coming.
Abdul Malik, I wish I have fraction of the wisdom that he has. He spoke so eloquently about the subject and all the different things that he taught us. That I will open, we have some time, we have half an hour for Q&A. But before I open the Q&A, I would like to mention one thing that I mentioned in my talk, that we are not here to be converted, to the Islamic faith. We are here to remove the misconceptions about Islam. To that effect, I have a brochure written by a Catholic professor, John Esposito. This is one of the best brochure I found about Islam written by a non-Muslim. And I have learned so much from this brochure. I have included quite a few topics from this brochure in my talk. So I want you to have a copy of it, but I have one request. There is a verses of the Quran. Please do not put this on the floor. Put it always on a table or something to a place. Now I would like to open the floor for the question that you might have. Our able speaker has talked so much. I'm sure you have quite a few questions.
Make a comment. My name is Raj. I'm not Muslim, but I have traveled the world. I love traveling, and everywhere, from China, Africa, you name it, 95% of the world is wonderful people. It's those 5% that make everybody, the bad people that come to life, which stinks, So, believe it or not, I've met some great white people, and one of my best friends all my friends are Muslim, whites, blacks, everyone. But also I've seen the worst in everybody else too, the culture. So yes, we all need diversity. Open up, and you open your hearts, you find some great people. So,
Thank you very much. So I'm going to be the official runner, so if anyone has any questions, please just raise your hand and I'll pass it on.
If I wanted to find the first ayat that you talked about, the color, see, I'm not going to do a good job of describing it, which is why I was going to ask if you could tell us how we would find it. I have a copy of the Quran on the phone.
So the Rum, or the Romans, so that's the 30th chapter of the Quran, 22 is the number of the ayah. So 30:22.
Thank you.
And pay attention to all of those around there, because they're mentioned many other different ayat, and I think it gains even more power in the context of all those. And then it has the ayat about that are usually in all the wedding invitations, because it mentions that in the spouses that God creates for you are also ayat from God. So you'll see all those beautiful things.
Please raise hand, fellas, raise hands.
If you guys have any questions, comments, thoughts, please.
Raise hand.
So thank you for your words. So you're from Chicago and stuff like that, and you said that you converted to Islam in 1994. You said, what was that experience like, given that you're not from, you weren't raised Muslim or anything like that, and joining this community, and what was that like, I assume obviously your family was Muslim, leaving that community and stuff like that, because it's a pretty big leap.
It was beautiful. And I was just reflecting on this yesterday, because yesterday we had an iftar at DePaul, okay? And it was actually while I was a student, an undergraduate student at DePaul in 1994 that I accepted Islam. But I remembered a Ramadan that I fasted even before I became Muslim. I was just fasting, and the reason I did that, as kind of was mentioned in the bio, was in high school even I became really interested in like Malcolm X and African American history. And then I was like, I want to learn more about Islam, because he said like people should learn more about Islam. But I was like, what I have found now, and I hope nobody takes offense in the audience, it's just a reality. I'm very proud to work at DePaul now, which is, as you shall know, the largest Catholic university in the United States.
Wow.
One of the things I've noticed though is that one of the most common life histories, I'm not the only one, is that I had the life history of stopping going to church after I was confirmed. So I was confirmed in 8th grade, and then I kind of stopped going to church. And so I wasn't anti-Catholicism or anything, but I wasn't, like most college students, I wasn't very religious. I always remind myself that once I became Muslim, I got so excited about it that I got really involved with the Muslim student group and did all this stuff. And now that I'm a chaplain on campus, I'm always wanting students, whatever their religious faith, get involved, come to that. But I have to remind myself, when I first came to campus, I never would have thought twice of going to mass or going to the religious student group. Not because I had anything against it, but just because that wasn't where my interest lies. And that is where a lot of our youth are today. That talking not Muslim or not just in general, a lot of the youth are not specifically identifying with different religious traditions. The number is going down, or a lot of them come from very complex backgrounds. We have this idea that you can ask someone what religion are you? And it's a tough question for a lot of people. There's nowadays more of them are well, my father was this, but then my mother is this, but my stepfather did this, but my grandma took me to this church sometimes. It's more confusing, especially among different denominations and stuff. It's not a simple answer. And how they feel about it is confusing. They're not necessarily against it or for it or whatever, but it may not speak to them at this time. I say all of that to say that I came to campus, and I was sitting, and I remember one of the most beautiful experiences I had with this, which this reminds me of, even though we had a small group of Muslims at campus at DePaul, is that we'd come to the time to break fast, and we had 10 people there. All of them came from different parts of the world. African American, someone from India, someone from Egypt, someone from Pakistan, and they all came and brought a dish, and they would all put it on the floor, and we all shared it together. And for me, that was something very different and very beautiful to me. And especially being in, like I said, that fasting mindset where my heart was open and my emotions were at the surface, and I would share that food with them. And I was just thinking yesterday as I was addressing the iftar we had at DePaul, where we had 75 people there, and there are close to 1,000 Muslim students at DePaul right now. I was I could never have imagined sitting on that floor that 20 some years from now, DePaul would have an iftar with this many people and there would be this many Muslim students at DePaul, and that DePaul would have a Muslim chaplain, and that Muslim chaplain would be me. Like, I was like, what? This is unbelievable. And so, but that is kind of the story of how I accept Islam. And then my parents and family were always very supportive of me in a beautiful way. Both of my parents grew up in very strong Catholic families. They were baby boomer kids. They grew up in very large Catholic families, very religious. My father went to a Catholic boarding school for all of high school. My mother was a novice. She was studying to become a nun, and she just left right before her final vows. But they were then also children of the 60s, so they kind of went through and they had a different way of kind of trying to express that faith and trying to share that faith with me. But in terms of my journey to Islam, when I came to, this is a sign of a mother's love, and my mother passed away, but I hope that she's appreciative. I know that she would love this type of gathering, because my mother, in the last few years that she was alive, once I got married and started having grandchildren, she would love to tell everyone she met, like at the swimming pool, the local swimming pool, the library, she would just go up to random strangers and talk to them and say, especially like if she saw any Muslims or anything, she would go up to them and say, yeah, how are you? And this is who I am and stuff. Did you know that my son is an imam? And like she just wanted to talk to them. And did you know that my granddaughter's name is Khadija? Yeah. So she loved that so much, and she was so proud of that. And that started from when I first said I was interested in Islam and I wanted to start going. She was totally supportive of me. She only thing she ever said was, don't be a person who becomes intolerant of others or thinks you have the only truth. But if you find something that you think is beautiful and you think is good, that you should search for it and you should do it. And she would drive me when I had no driver's license. She would drive me to a mosque on the west side of Chicago on Friday for my prayers and drop me off there. And I don't know what she was thinking in her mind, but that's what the path I was on, and she supported me on that. So it was ended up being beautiful. Of course, that's not the story of everyone who converts to Islam, and we know that there's tensions in different families, and we ask that God heal those tensions and make it beautiful for everyone. Some of the most beautiful interfaith experiences I've had, though, in my life have been funerals. As I mentioned in the bio, I was the imam of something called the Inner City Islamic Center on the south side of Chicago, and there, a lot of the congregation was African American converts to Islam. And what you find among the African American community of Muslims in the U.S. is that a lot of them are well integrated to their families and their communities. Okay, and but there's still sometimes tensions, because people are very proud of being Christians, and sometimes and especially these things sometimes come out around funerals, because you can imagine if your child passes away, you want your child to be buried according to your religious tradition, and then some people come and say, hey, we know this guy, he hanging around with us at the mosque and he said he was Muslim, and people have complicated lives and stuff. But so there's difficult things that happen, but the most beautiful things I would find were when they would be doing a service, the family would be doing a service to say goodbye to their family member in their own way, and then they would allow us as the Muslims to come in and do the Muslim prayer and do the prayer for them as well. And many times it was a beautiful interfaith experience about, again, that was not superficial at all, but about something that's really important, the reality that we're all human beings, and we're all going to die, and we're all going to face God, and that the really important things are not these labels we put on ourselves, but our relationship with that Creator that we have.
Why is it that the women aren't praying when we see them on the rug and stuff?
Definitely, women and men are both obligated to pray and pray the same. The only possible exceptions are women, when they're menstruating, they don't pray, so they may not be praying during that time. And then there may be divisions, as we said, so the men and women may pray in different areas, but they all pray equally the same, and definitely it's very important. It's also important to note, because I'll give a shout out on behalf of my wife, and one thing that I think the Muslim community is getting better at now, and maybe we can continue to get better at, is that fasting is such a beautiful thing. I think they recently released a survey that showed that fasting Ramadan is the most engaged in religious practice of Muslims generally. So Muslims fast in Ramadan more than they like pray 5 times a day and stuff like that. So, and fasting in Ramadan is no joke. It's a big thing. But it's just a way of the community, and I think it's a sign mainly of how beautiful Muslims find fasting. Muslims, all kinds of Muslims, no matter how pious and religious they normally are, they find fasting in Ramadan to be a beautiful experience, and so they love to do it and they come back for that, you know, and it's a whole month long rather than, you know, in other traditions you may come back just for Christmas or the high holidays in Jewish or whatever, but this is like a longer period of time where you come back and do this worship. But at the same time, what we sometimes don't talk about enough in our community is that there are many people for medical reasons or for other reasons who cannot fast, especially these long days, and we have to talk more about how to make the time beautiful for them and not to make them feel ashamed or lesser because they're not fasting during this time. But there's many beautiful ways in which they can share all the blessings of this time, and I think our community is getting better at that. And I say a shout out to my wife because my wife is like, because we've had 5 children, as I mentioned, so because she didn't fast during the times when she was pregnant or breastfeeding, just for the health of the child and making sure everything was okay, that means that she built up like 300 and some days that she has to like fast at some point in the future. So inshallah she'll be able to do that, but you know, certainly everything that she does is a means of worship and a means of getting closer to God. And so we should continue to acknowledge all the different ways in which people get closer to God. And I think that's something that we can continue to do in a beautiful way. I'm sorry, I hope your question was answered. I know that wasn't directly responsive to it, but it's what your question made me think of. So.
The question that you asked, the answer is mentioned in this brochure that I just gave you. This brochure is about frequently asked questions about Islam. So he has asked quite a few questions that you might think is offensive, but he has explained it real well. John Esposito has asked several questions and explained it, and I've learned a lot from John Esposito. So if you have any more questions, Salman is here to take the mic.
I quickly want to mention to everyone, again, there is no such thing as an offensive question. This is the right forum to ask those questions, because you're either going to get it answered by a Muslim rather than going on Google and finding a whole plethora of answers which are just completely bogus.
Is there such thing as blended marriages in Islam?
Definitely there is. It can be a sensitive issue because the traditional understanding and the traditional understanding of the Quranic prescription is that Muslim men can marry women from people of the book, but not necessarily the other way around. So, and this is, you know, and again, this is just with regard to religion. You know, it's very fascinating because people have all, you know, your question, I understood what it was about interfaith marriages. A lot of people may look at blended in like different ways. I know like my grandparents, one was Irish and one was Norwegian. I think they thought that was a blended marriage. But even at that time, my grandmother, who was Norwegian, she converted to Catholicism. She had grown up, you know, Protestant. She converted to Catholicism in order to marry my grandfather, who from what I can tell, you know, he died when I was young, but from what I can tell, he wasn't a very religious person, but he wanted his wife to be Catholic and he wanted his family to be Catholic. And that was obviously much more common among all types of groups of people than it is maybe today for some people. But in the Muslim religious tradition, at least according to Muslim religious law, there is that issue which I can say that many Muslim women that I teach and our students with, they may struggle with at times. It's whether you're going to choose to have an interfaith marriage. I always say, because I counsel some people who are thinking of that, is always a question of how you understand your faith and how you practice your faith, whether that's going to be an issue or not. For some people, like for me, I couldn't imagine being married to someone who's not Muslim just because Islam is like my whole life. So it would be odd if my wife couldn't share that with me, like it would make a distance between us. But in other circumstances, I could see it not being as big of a deal for people. So they just need to figure out how important that is. But as you can see, having blended marriages in terms of ethnicity and stuff, even though unfortunately in some Muslim communities, it is still a difficulty at times for various reasons, it is something that is encouraged in Islam in general, and is something that that is starting to happen more and more among the younger generations. I hope that's not controversial to anyone here, but it is definitely something that's important as we get to know each other. Lita'arafu is one of the best ways to get to know each other.
How do you introduce the children into fasting?
No, alhamdulillah. As you can, you know, one of the beautiful things that you realize in having children, I'm sure everyone here who has children realizes, is that Because I used to wonder so much, and I think my wife and I come from a little different perspective because she grew up in a Muslim home and I converted to Islam. And I'm always worried about like turning the kids off from religion or from Islam, you know, and she has more of a like, her parents were like, no, you have to make them do this certain things, like you just have to make their children like they can't choose everything for themselves. And not in a mean way, but just in like a way like, it's time to do this now. And we go back and forth on those things. But what you learn, what I think you learn is that really, and of course there's always exceptions and we're not, you know, people choose their own way in life, but in general, whatever the kids see you doing, they're going to end up doing. Now they may have their teenagers where they rebel a little. I haven't had that yet, alhamdulillah. But in general they do that. So if you imagine, like in most Muslim homes, like I said about how fasting Ramadan, even though it may seem difficult, is like one of the most joyous and festive times of the year. So kids actually, as parents, most of the time you have to kind of maybe discourage younger kids who want to do the fast from doing it if they're not ready to, rather than like forcing kids to fast who don't want to, because mostly they want to participate in it. So I don't know how everyone does it, but like, so some of my kids when they're young and they're not required to fast yet and they're not able to fast, some of them will do things like fast for half a day or something, or you know, get used to sharing the experience of it, and slowly be introduced. Some will maybe fast on the weekend when they can sleep like a lot of the day, you know, or something like that. But it's a way of just introducing them, as you said, to getting them more used to it. Especially, it's a little easier to break someone in the winter. When you're breaking, you can't really break in on like a 17.5-hour fast, you know. That's tough for a child. And definitely the fasting is supposed to be a spiritual cleansing. Like it's supposed to bring out these things in you, but it's not supposed to be physically harmful or dangerous to you, or so if you're having that, then you would stop immediately and you would break the fast from it.
Years of age, when Ramadan comes in India, there's a festive atmosphere. Everybody's up, everybody's, you know, trying to eat in the middle of the night and then going to mosque and breaking the fast. I was 9 years of age. It happened to be month of May, which is the hottest month of the year in India. And I remember that my mother used to ask me, "But we have done fasted enough, now it's at 3 o'clock that you just, this is the time for you to do the iftar." But I refused to eat it, and I remember I lie down on the fan, make a wet cloth and put it on over me so that I'm a little bit hydrated through the air. So kids love to do fasting. I have a hard time to tell my children when they're young not to fast because they love to fast to get that experience.
Fasting, you hear that concept a lot, you know, mind over matter. But the way I'd like to look at it is, you know, love over matter. Because God has commanded us to do something and we did it, and we do it. And again, 18 hours is nothing. There's someone who came to me who has a 6-year-old daughter who's fasting because they see their parents fasting, and so they're excited and they want to be part of that. And again, like I said, it's completely love over matter.
First of all, thank you so much for your hospitality. This is quite amazing. I'm curious about the significance of the food. I have heard that you break the fast with dates, and I'm just wondering if the other food that you served us, if there's a significance in each of the items.
No, I mean the dates, as you meant, is a what we call sunnah way of breaking the fast, because the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would break the fast with dates, because that was, you know, a big staple food in the Arabian Peninsula where he was, and it has a lot of benefits. I'm sure the doctor could tell you like medical benefits and reasons why that might be good. But the other foods, basically, they might all have benefits, but why I was saying maybe someone else should answer this. I think these are more like Desi cultural foods. Indo-Pakistani cultural foods, and each different culture, each different area will have different foods that may be associated with their culture, or maybe traditional for them to break fast with, or for them to eat. So you might have different Arab countries and different African countries and different South Asian countries will all have different foods that they associate with the month. And like any of us might associate certain foods with holiday times and special times, they take on a lot of meaning, but it's not necessarily like a religious meaning.
One more question, thank you so much. We're going to have one more question, and then, again, it's going to be time to break the fast, and we're just deeply appreciative and indebted to you guys for being here, to be able to break fast with us as well. So what are you eating? Okay, so the peas they're called cholik, and I'm just gonna warn you guys, they make you burp a lot. All right, so eat at your own. So watermelons or watermelons, and the samosas. You've probably heard it, it's like a wrap. It's some type of vegetable. There's vegetables in there and potatoes that are mashed together, and that's what everyone else is breaking their fast with as well. And immediately after that, we will have our prayer. You'll hear the adhan. So maybe if I can ask Hilbert to turn the mic. The mic is going to be on. You'll hear the call of prayer, and then people will pray, and then they will come back down and have a formal dinner as well. We have dinner as well. So you guys are more than welcome to say. Again, one more question. And you can please, even after this, if you guys have any questions, you can come up and ask. Any other questions or comments or thoughts you may have? See if others thinking.
In the Christian tradition, the elderly are absolved from some of the fasts, am I right? Would that be also true in Islam?
Yes, certainly. As I said, the general rule, and the Quran actually specifically mentions that if you're either ill, if you're sick, or you're on a journey, that you don't have to fast. Now, if it's a temporary illness, you would then make up the day later on. If it's more like a chronic condition that you're going to have for the rest of your life, that makes fasting injurious to your health, then yes, if you're an older person who can no longer fast, it would be injurious to their health, then yes, you should stop fasting. And what you actually do instead of fasting is feed a poor, hungry person for that day instead of fasting yourself. And then we kind of joked about kids wanting to fast, but really one of the hardest things I would say in my experience from family members, especially of my wife, who become old or ill and can't fast anymore, that is really hard for some of them because they love fasting and love doing all these acts of worship. So sometimes they'll fight it again and do it, and sometimes you have to come in and make sure that they're taking care of their health because they will put fasting over their health sometimes. But definitely that exception is there. Again, the fasting is not supposed to damage anyone's health, and that would be going against the command of God. The whole point of the fast is not punishing yourself, but it's obeying God. So that's why as soon as the time comes out, when sunset comes in, we rush to break the fast right away. We don't sit and say, I could go another half hour. That doesn't make you closer to God. It's closer to God is like when God says don't eat, you don't eat, and when God says eat, you eat right away. So you show that what you're doing is a means of training yourself to be obedient to God and to do what's good. It's not about training yourself to be able to go without food for a long time. That's not the point of it.
Before I close this, I would like to recognize an individual who is here. It's Javed Akhtar. Would you please stand up, Dr. Akhtar? Dr. Akhtar is a special person. He uses his zakat money to take care of the poor individuals in Hyderabad, a dilapidated area. He has started a clinic, he and his wife, both are doctors. They spend tremendous amount of their money to start a clinic, and they have all specialties, general practitioners, dentists, dermatologists, nephrologists, and I don't know how he does it, but for me it is easy to write a check and give it to him because I want to participate from my zakat money for the poor people. But to do it on the field, when to go hire doctors, hire the nurses, hire technicians, hire the pharmacists, is not an easy job. I applaud you, Dr. Akhtar, that you have done a tremendous job. I hope there's a lot of respect for your work. Thank you very much. Just wait.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم بسم الله خير الأسماء بسم الله رب الأرض ورب السماء بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه داء بسم الله على نفسي وديني بسم الله على أهلي ومالي بسم الله على كل شيء أعطاني بسم الله الشافي بسم الله الكافي بسم الله المعافي بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض